Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. And my name is Cho Man, and I'm in charge of underground electricity cables. And I'd like to talk about the present and future of transmission technology. I will proceed my presentation very fast due to the time constraints. First and foremost, I would like to touch upon the market conditions, followed by the trend of global offshore wind power and grid interconnection. First, global renewable energy expansion due to the emergence of AI era. The demand for data centers is on the rise, and we are moving to greater needs of electricity due to the expansion of EVs. So, on the global stage, expansion of investments is witnessed for electricity supply and electricity grids. At the same time, in order to achieve net zero, renewable energy is promoted further on top of the existing research sources. And you can see the global electricity demand provided by the International Energy Agency as of 2025. And you can see the number increased from 27,178 to 32,542 terawatt hours. And if you look at the chart on the right, you can see the annual global change in electricity generation by source from 2019 to 2027. It is expected that the renewable energy generation sources is going to be increased from 2024 to 2030 by 5,510 gigawatts, and compared to that of 7 years ago, it is a 165% increase. In particular, solar power and wind power is going to be at the center of the renewable energy, and related facilities and equipment is going to be further established. And when it comes to the offshore wind power, we are going to see a 212 gigawatt installation capacity increase from 2024 to 2030. The increase in renewable energy generation is necessarily requiring the expansion of the capacity of electricity. So new grids have to be built for the increase in electricity transmission. If you look at the map on the left side of the screen, you can see the Energy Highway project, and in the middle, you can see the Energy Island project's HVDC links in the UK. So many related products are actively promoted by different governments, and they are considered as a very important pillar for renewable energy expansion. And you can also see the HVDC links in the UK on the right side of the slide. This is offshore wind power and grid connectivity, grid connection cable application. So I'm working for Taihan, and we are specializing in the electricity grids. So in order to build more offshore wind power plants and transmit generated electricity, we need more underground cables, and you can categorize the tables into three parts. If you look at the lower part of the slide, you can see the internal submarine cables, And so this is for the collection of electricity from the power plants. And you can see three S's in red in the middle. So this is about transmitting electricity generated by the power plants to the substation and to the land. So through these routes and through these channels, the generated electricity is sent to the land. So you can see three different types of submarine cables at the bottom of the screen. So if you look at the left part, you can see the internal network submarine cable. And there are different kilovolts specialized for different cables. And it is considered today to increase the capacity to embrace more volts. And you can also see export cable in the middle. And this is for the connection between the land-based and offshore substations. And if you look at the right part of the slide, you can see the HVDC submarine cables. And in order to send the generated electricity from two regions, it is important to minimize the loss of electricity. So to that end, the HVDC cables are developed and utilized very actively. And these HVDC cables are mostly utilized by many regions. This slide shows expansion of the offshore wind power market. So the expansion of the offshore wind power market led to the expansion of the submarine cable market as well. And I believe that the submarine cable market is going to be expanded further. By 2030, the submarine cable will outpace that of existing cables, and the stock prices of submarine cables surged for the last couple of years. The market size is worth at 33 trillion Korean won. And this is the technology trends for submarine cables. First and foremost, the turbine capacity is being increased. In 2017, the turbine capacity was 8 megawatt, but the number increased to 15 to 20 megawatt by 2020. 2030. And the offshore wind power towers are installed in two different ways, fixed type and dynamic type. And the most commercialized type is fixed type. And floating wind power has huge potential to grow, especially when the wind direction is good and technology support is provided. I believe that going forward, this floating type wind power is going to be further developed. And different grid systems of countries must be intertwined, and HVDC cables will be used to that end. And the demand for HVDC will skyrocket in the future. Actually, it is surging today. 33 or 66 kilovolt is shifted to 232, and this option is now being reviewed by the authorities. And the floating cable And the dynamic cable that can be used for the floating wind power is developed. And some experimental complexes are trying these cables already. And it is believed that this type of cables is going to be expanded further in the future. So the global renewable energy market is growing, and our role is tilted to the application. We are trying to install and supply submarine cables, and to that end, we are constructing the cable plants in Korea. We completed the construction of our first plant for submarine cables this May, and our second plant, which will support the Yeonggwang-Nagar wind power project, is being constructed. And the second cable is 400 kilovolt grade, and it can produce up to 640 kilovolt class HVDC submarine cables. It is believed that the second plant of our company is going to be completely built by 2027. And the construction starting ceremony is planned this September. If you look at the slide, you can see that the internal ray cables, and especially 132 kilovolt submarine cable, as well as 345 kilovolt external submarine cables can be produced in the first plant of our company, and our second plant is going to be able to provide 400 kilovolt HVAC external cable submarine cables and for 640 kilovolt HVDC submarine cables. So the submarine cables, and in particular the supply and production of the cables, require the installation of such cables. So we secured by the end of 2023 the cable laying vessels, and the cable laying vessels where companies are actively utilized today. It is a very good vessel because it can navigate itself, and it has a very dynamic positioning system. It is very stable in operation, and it can shorten the period for the transportation and installation of cables. By securing these vessels, we were equipped with the capacity to provide full value chain services in the submarine cable businesses. And we are now planning to secure more cable laying vessels as well. In Yeonggwang-Nagar wind power project, 230-kilometer cables are going to be installed through the cable laying vessels. This wraps up my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cho Jae-mun, for the first presentation. And the second speaker will be invited to the stage. The second presentation will be given by Hyundai Motors.
전략팀 맡고 있는
Good afternoon. I am responsible for EV distribution in Korea, and Also, I'm covering the topic of distribution of charging infrastructure, even though the topic is, even though the presentation is about hydrogen, I would like to take a balanced perspective. I believe that I am in the best position to provide an unbiased presentation about the topic of hydrogen. Let's ask why carbon neutrality is necessary. And this shows why Hyundai Motors is so much interested and passionate towards the topic of carbon neutrality. And next, I will talk about the hydrogen-related business areas of Hyundai Motors. I think I have 15 minutes, and I have many slides in my presentation deck, so I will try to be quick. The scientists mentioned that the surface temperature of the Earth has risen by 2 degrees Celsius after the Industrial Revolution. However, I'm unhappy with that, uncomfortable with that, because the expression itself is, it will be difficult to impress the public with that expression. And the scientists are emphasizing the importance of carbon neutrality, mentioning that the Earth surface temperature has risen by 2 degrees Celsius. And I believe the average value is quite misleading. And you might wonder why 2 degrees Celsius, the difference in temperature of 2 degrees Celsius, is so risky and dangerous for the mankind. And not many of us understand the implication of the temperature increase of 2 degrees Celsius. After the Industrial Revolution, because of our carbon emission, the Earth temperature has risen. And since until last year, the Earth's temperature has risen by 4 degrees Celsius until last year after the Industrial Revolution. And in that case, most of the coral reefs will become extinct, and in hotter regions, unbearable heat waves will occur, and in cold regions, unbearable or unsurvivable cold spells will occur, and therefore the balance on the Earth will be destroyed. So, in other words, the Earth will lose its ability to recover itself, and against this backdrop, human beings will never be able to survive in this environment, and therefore the situation is quite dire, and that's why I'm mentioning this. And we have many, many great electric vehicles in Hyundai Motors, and you might wonder why we would have to develop hydrogen vehicles by developing new technologies, and there is a reason why we're doing that. One of the most pressing reasons would be this. With EVs alone, we won't be able to deliver carbon neutrality because, in the case of hydrogen energy, we call this technology energy in Hyundai Motors because it is not dependent on fossil fuels or minerals. And this is we are utilizing a natural element that exists in the universe, and it has the greatest fit with the renewable energies because renewable energy sources are quite intermittent. In most of the cases, they have intermittency, and also the production of the energy, power production should be consistent uh, with the peak in energy usage because, for instance, in the case of Jeju-do Island, most of the renewable energies produced are being discarded because they are not consistent with the peak times where where the demands are the highest. And we cannot be dependent on rare earth. In the case of fuel cells, we're highly dependent on production of rare earth, and therefore it cannot cover 100% of the demand. But in that sense, hydrogen is completely supplementary. And also, we lack natural resources and fossil fuels, and therefore, this will be considered as the most independent energy sources in the world for Korean people. And also, in the case of EVs cannot 100% reduce the carbon emissions in the case of vessels and large-size commercial trucks, only if we can utilize hydrogen as power source for these vehicles, we can achieve carbon neutrality. And fourth, in terms of diversification of energy portfolio, what I would like to emphasize is this one. If we can electrify everything, the aftermath would be unimaginable because we need to produce even more power. Peak times are important in the power business, and if demands do not meet the amount of supply, blackouts would occur. And if we electrify every single thing, the size of power demand would increase by 100%, and we need to secure power grid and power sources, and therefore renewable energy alone will never be enough to cover those demands. And therefore, to achieve carbon neutrality, complete carbon neutrality, Hyundai Motors believed that conversion into hydrogen would be one of the answers. That was the answer that we found. In the beginning of the year, it is quite difficult for an automaker to make this announcement, but we declared that we wanted to full-fledgedly do business in all areas of hydrogen. And against the spectrum, we launched a new hydrogen business brand called H2. Not only in Hyundai Motors, but also there are Hyundai Motors subsidiaries, and though all of us are producing, storing, and distributing hydrogen on the entire value chain in order to present a viable answer to carbon neutrality achievement. So Hyundai Motors, with mobility and hydrogen production and distribution. Excuse me, the H2 business is composed of mobility business and hydrogen value chain business, covering production, storage, and transportation of hydrogen. And we have started our efforts in order to become the industrial leader. As was mentioned before, I kept talking about grid and etc. I will get into more details on later pages. First, hydrogen production. There are many ways for hydrogen production, and among them, Hyundai Motors is interested in converting hydrogen or generating hydrogen from waste from multiple locations, including Cheongju, Paju, and Indonesia. We're venturing into these new areas, as you can see on the slide. And in terms of hydrogen storage, transportation, and charging, together with HyNet, the largest charging stations operator in Korea, we have invested in the aforementioned company, expanding our footprints in the charging businesses in Korea, and we are also developing a moving or portable station solutions for hydrogen charging. And recently, the portable station will be installed for transportation of green hydrogen, and in Seongnam City, there are hydrogen generated from the wastewater treatment facility. And to store the generated hydrogen, we're going to install the portable station nearby the wastewater treatment station in order to transport and store the aforementioned produced hydrogen. If we combine hydrogen and oxygen, water will be created. And if the technology is advanced, we can apply water electrolysis technology to produce hydrogen. There is such a possibility in terms of technological advancement. Hyundai Motors are very passionate about hydrogen vehicles, and it all started back in 1998. It started from development of hydrogen fuel cell technology that it developed in 1998. Hyundai Motors developed the hydrogen fuel cell for EV, and we applied it to Santa Fe FCEV prototype. And for the first time in 2013, excuse me, 18, we launched Nexo, which is the best-selling FCEV in the world. And in 2020, we launched a hydrogen-powered intra-city bus. And in 2023, we also launched hydrogen-powered intra-city bus, and the all-new Nexo was launched in 2025, a few months ago. As a global top tier in the hydrogen vehicle market, we're feeling the serious responsibilities that we have, and we're currently leading the market. Until now, until last month, this shows the historical sales result. In the case of Nexo, we have sold 37,000 units of Nexo, and including the all-new Nexo, we have sold 39,000 units of Nexo. And after the launch of hydrogen-powered intra and intercity buses, we have sold more than 2,000 units of hydrogen-powered intra and intercity buses. And also, there are many cleaning trucks powered by hydrogen and manufactured by Hyundai Motors. Once more hydrogen vehicles are distributed and are operated in the Korea, of course, there will be zero carbon emission. And in the case of hydrogen-powered buses, for instance, it will be able to generate clean air, 1.04 million tons of clean air that will be able to help 180,000 adults healthily breathe on the road that is heavily polluted at the moment. A few minutes ago, I made an analogy about EVs. If you are to, this shows the situation that is likely to occur when everything is electrified. I try to express the idea in a quantitative manner. Let's imagine that we are operating 26,000 Ioniq 5 at the same time. That would likely consume electricity of 2,200 megawatt per hour. So we need to think about installing a power grid that is able to power an entire industrial complex. Hyundai Motors is not producing electricity powered tractors, but in case we sell 4,000 electricity powered tractors, it will require an electricity that is equivalent to 2,200 megawatt per hour that is able to feed the electricity to the entire industrial complex. And therefore, it is never easy. It won't be easy for us to electrify everything. And there's another issue of AER. For instance, hydrogen vehicles has 100% larger AER compared to EVs, and it also has even larger loading capacity compared to EVs. And let's take a look at the charging time that is required in the case of hydrogen-powered trucks. In the case of large-sized trucks, they may be charged between 16 to 20 minutes, and if you are to build an electricity powered trucks that big, it will require 2 hours for us to fully charge them. And this is already verified in the EV market. For electricity powered buses, they need separate charging stations because they cannot use the ones that are available for passenger EVs. And therefore, for fast charging of electricity powered commercial vehicles, separate sets of charging stations will be required, and therefore, since we cannot electrify everything, the void should be filled, the gap should be filled by hydrogen vehicles. And in that sense, if we try to deliver carbon neutrality through introducing an even larger number of hydrogen vehicles, we'll be able to enjoy even larger number of benefits. In the field of vehicles, we're not only expanding our product lineup, we're expanding our fuel cell lineup so that we can collaborate with other commercial vehicle producers in the world. We are contributing to the global carbon neutrality achievements. And in addition to the commercial vehicles that you see on the slide, we're adding the hydrogen fuel cells to the internal combustion engine so that drivers of those internal combustion engine cars will be able to enjoy even faster speeds. In non-vehicle areas, Hyundai Motors are launching and developing products in the areas of mobility and industrial through providing stacks to hydrogen power forklifts and through providing stacks to AGVs. In various areas, we're carrying out hydrogen stack business. In 2018, when we launched Nexo, there were 10 hydrogen charging stations nationwide, but at the moment, there are 228 charging stations in the country. And as was mentioned before, we have an infrastructure in place so that we will be able to further increase the number of hydrogen vehicle fleet in the country. Hyundai Motors is working in the field of mobility, but also in other areas, including charging stations, in order to achieve carbon neutrality based on hydrogen technology. Thank you very much.
네, 감사합니다. 현대자동차가 진심인지 알 수 있었던
Thank you very much. We were able to understand how Hyundai Motors commit to hydrogen cars, and I look forward to the future created by the company. Next, I'd like to invite Mr. Jung Chan.
오늘
We'll give a presentation. Please welcome Mr. Chung with a warm round of applause. Good afternoon. I'm Jung Chung of Hanwha Solution. We're focusing on developing photovoltaic cells. And we are focusing on developing on silicon-based tandem photovoltaic fuel cells, photovoltaic solar cells. We would like to talk about the market trends, and we would like to summarize our suggestions to the government. In terms of installation capacity, as you know, This is considered as a power sources that is the easiest to install. Chinese has the largest number of solar cells. Every year, 400 to 500 gigawatt worth of new power capacity is being introduced. If you view the chart on the right hand side, you will see different technologies in the solar cell market. The PERC technology is the mainstream technology in the market. We are passing through the year of 2025, and it accounts for the majority of the market. And the TOPCon and heterojunction technology are increasing their shares in the market, replacing the PERC technology. On the right hand side, even though the share is quite minimal, after 2027, silicon-based tandem solar cell will increase its share in the market according to market analysts. In other words, TOPCon, heterojunction, silicon-based tandem solar cell, once they're introduced, the power generation capacity and efficiency will be enhanced through introduction of those new technologies. In the past, solar power generation used to be very expensive, and therefore we cannot install them without any government subsidies. And on the right hand side, you will see LCOE, levelized cost of electricity, and the denominator is composed of is composed as the sum of capex and opex, and the denominator has consistently declined, with just 10% of the 2010% LCOE. And that was thanks to the technological advancement and efforts. Through the efforts, industrial efforts, we could deliver the economy of scale, and operation periods increased from 20 years to even 30 years, and therefore the product lifespan has increased quite significantly. And here you see a comparison between the LCOE of different power sources, and there are some people that say that including the OPEX and maintenance costs, the LCOE of solar cells or solar power generation isn't so low compared to other energy sources. But in the case of utility scale solar cells, LCOE, you can see that the LCOE of those cases is significantly low. As was mentioned in the beginning, the market focus is shifting towards TOPCon from PERC. And as you can see here, the share of TOPCon is increasing further, replacing the share of PERC technology. And the solar cell manufacturers are replacing PERC lines with TOPCon lines, and they're revamping their production processes accordingly. And you will see the efficiency results. These are lab results. In the case of silicon-based solar cell, the power efficiency is 27.8%. In the case of tandem, it has already exceeded the level of 36%, and the commercial results will be important in this case. And that's because of the theoretical limitations. And the tandem cells are produced based on silicons, and no matter how we develop technologies, we said that the theological limitation would be 25%, 29%, and that was one of the most pressing concerns for the scholars in the field. And therefore, silicon alone, we could not overcome the limitations, and therefore we had to discover a new material in order to overcome the theological limitation of 29%. And that was the area of research until now. And even though TOPCon is increasing its share in the market, the limitation was difficult to be overcome. Even though the power efficiency was higher in the case of TOPCon, it was difficult for them to overcome the limitation. In the case of crystalline silicon-based solar cells, you might be familiar with 250 megawatt, 300 megawatt crystalline silicon-based solar cells. However, we are seeing 800 megawatt ones products these days because the size of wafers has greatly increased, and therefore the power capacity has increased, and as the size increased, BOS and installation cost declined. And as a result, G12 indicates the size of wafer. In the past, M6 were the majority in the market, but now the majority of the market is M10, and China is shifting its focus towards G12. And as G12 products accounts for the majority of the market, I believe that the market's majority power capacity will be 700 megawatt. And here you're viewing comparison between solar cell technologies, and on at the top you will see multi-junction solar cell, and that's an emergency power sources for satellites in the universe, and efficiency is very high, and this is a special module, and therefore this is an example, excuse me, exception. And PERC and TOPCons are considered as viable solutions considering its material, excuse me, considering its low cost. However, we believe that the perovskite Si tandem will see its production efficiency increase and therefore cost decline in the future. But the issue is these solar cells should last at least more than 20 years, and therefore usable life's durability and backability would become an issue. All solar cell producers are testing exactly that. As was mentioned before, the theological limitation would be 29% for silicon-based solar cells, and we believe that the tandem solar cells would greatly exceed the theological efficiency. And that is because tandem solar cells are utilizing different materials, including perovskites, and they absorb different wavelengths. From the bottom cell, they absorb low energy area lights, while the top cell, composed of perovskite, would absorb high energy wavelengths. And therefore, compared to the size of the input, the size of output would increase. Perovskite, perovskite was named after a Russian scholar, perovskite, and its absorption coefficient is very high. However, stability is still at a weak level, and therefore silicon bottom cell should be introduced at the bottom level in order to enhance stability. It is easy to adjust the band gap in the case of perovskite solar cell, and also carrier diffusion length is very high, very long, and therefore the material itself is quite optimal for solar power generation, but stability should be enhanced. And therefore testing is still ongoing with regards to the use of perovskite. And this shows the structure of perovskite solar cells. You will see the perovskite in the middle, and they are covered by transparent electrodes. They function as a single unit to generate solar power, to convert solar power into electricity. The efficiency is consistently improving, and that is related to the size of tandem cells. At the moment, we have developed a very small tandem cells, and the level of power efficiency, power generation efficiency against the spectrum is not that important. And it is important for us to test the power efficiency with the industrial size of tandem cells. And in the case of Hanwha Q cells, our tandem cell showed power efficiency of 28.6% with industrial cell size of 330 square centimeter. In the end, it is important for us to achieve commercialization and mass production, but there are pending issues. We need to develop a production processes. The production processes should be able to achieve wafer sizing, and mass production facilities are required. Only if we can develop a nice and uh, completely capable equipment, we can produce good products. And we're trying to develop the equipments in Korea, not in China. And to that end, we're collaborating with multiple equipment manufacturers. And also, as was mentioned before, bankability is important. Credibility is important because these solar cells should maintain the initial level of power generation efficiency over an extensive period of time. And only if it happens, we can generate power utilizing the product, and only if bankability, a certain level of bankability is ensured, the lenders will be able to provide financing to those solar cells. And therefore, we are testing the products in order to ensure a high level of bankability, and also international standards and certification will be important. And only if we can get those global certification, we'll be able to produce and sell the products that are globally sellable in the overseas market. As was mentioned before, we have received certificate. Our lab result was certified based on the international standards, and the result is all the more meaningful because we were utilizing an industrial size cell. And this, in May 2025, we passed the stress test based on the global standards. There's an We have acquired a certification letter from TUV, which is one of the most renowned certification agencies in the world, located in Germany. And through joining hands with the academia and the government, we are carrying out these government-funded projects. And ecosystem also matters in the case of the solar cell industry. At the moment, China is number one in the solar cell industry, and we're importing everyone from China. But in order to become a game changer in the tandem cell market, we're closely collaborating with schools and the government in Korea. And also, we have made an extensive amount of investment in Jincheon to build a pilot or trial production line in Jincheon, Chungnam. And we're testing the entire steps in the production process, and if we can successfully produce a product, since we have received the certification for the mass production processes, we'll be able to install a mass production processes and mass production lines in the aforementioned factory. In order to boost the industrial activities, we would like to make these suggestions. With the inauguration of Lee Jae-myung government, the new government has selected renewable energy as one of the most important national agenda items. And to expand the renewable energy market, we need to rationalize the regulations concerning the safety distances, and also we need to expand our investment in the grids and ESS system. And recently, the solar cell industry has not received much attention from the public. And in order to further grow this industry, we need a proper protection for this industry. We hope that the tandem solar cell industry will be designated as a strategically most important technology by the government. Thank you very much for listening.
네, 감사합니다. 오늘
Thank
you very much for your wonderful presentation on the development status of PVs. Now I'd like to invite our next speaker. He will give a presentation on the energy storage system. Mr. Chu Yeon-hoo is going to give a presentation titled Technology Trends in Energy Storage Systems. Please give a big hand, ladies and gentlemen. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm from LS Electric and I'm the team leader, Chu Yeon-hoo. My presentation's title is Technology Trends in Energy Storage System. Due to the time constraints, I like to skip the first and the second parts because those two topics have been fully covered by the previous presenters. So let me skip those slides. So let's look at the R100 status. Actually, the importance of storage systems are not dealt with so much. That's why I like to focus my presentation on that part. So solar power plants and wind power plants are going to be further developed, and people might wonder why storage systems are important. Stable supply of renewable energies must be guaranteed. That's why storage systems are required. And we have to think about weather conditions, changing weather conditions when we talk about renewable energies, because depending on the weather conditions, the supply and generation of new renewable energy can be varied. It is expected that Korea are going to achieve 108.3 gigawatt of renewable energy facilities by 2036, which is huge. Again, instability is a key issue we have to address. Distribution of electricity must be dealt with in our transition to renewable energy, and the amount of electricity that can be sent and received is fixed. So if the restrictions are imposed on the grid, we cannot successfully send and receive electricity generated from the renewable energy sources, no matter how much we generate energy from those reliable sources. So this is the evolution of the power grid. Today, energy production, transmission, and consumption are seen on the screen. So energy is generated from the plant and it is transmitted, transformed, and distributed to each different household and end-to-end consumers. And all the grids are connected from the station, power plants, and substations. And ESS itself can contribute to the stable supply of electricity generated from the renewable energy sources from the station to the households. Energy storage system can be categorized into 5 parts: mechanical, electrochemical, electrical, chemical, and thermal. Storage systems exist. So you can understand different characteristics of these different systems, and you can see some different principles, including potential and kinetic energy, electrical and chemical reactions, direct storage of electric and magnetic fields, and conversion and storage in chemical fuels, and storing heat energy for later use. And hydrogen storage can be taken as a good example for chemical storage systems. So today I'd like to focus my presentation on the electrical energy sources, energy storage systems. And the advantage of this system is that energy can be sent and received at a very fast pace, and the concentration of energy is very high. ESS can be understood this way. There is a battery and there is a EMS that monitors the entire operation, and it directly saves direct current. And we have to transform DC to AC or vice versa. To that end, we need a power conditioning system that allow the conversion of different types of current. And we also need the energy management system for the comprehensive management of the entire system. So battery is for energy storage, PCS, DC and AC power conversion, BMS, battery management system, and EMS for energy management system. So ESS plays a role, plays many roles in particular. How much electricity that we use is shown in the meters, and we can understand this role into two parts: front of the meter and behind the meter. Front of the meter refers to which is called FTM. Front of the meters is about the generation power plants and the substations and etc. And behind the meter, or BTM, is about the consumers, for example, the production plants or households. And it is also related to distributed energy and emergency use of energy. So usually BTM and FTM play different roles. Recently, the trends of ESS is changing. In the past, DC packs, which is about batteries or battery maintenance systems or protection switchgears, were in the mainstream. However, it is changing to AC packs. AC packs is about PCS, and the battery system is saved and mounted in the entire container system. BMS, protection switchgear, string PCS, and battery are contained in a package today. PCS or inverter system can be shown on the screen. So, separate PCS, BMS exist, and the PCS is converged into the energy type that we need to use, and that can be sent directly to the consumer. And if you look at the last part, the right part of the slide, you can see MV station. It is containing PCS, transformer, and protection switchgear. It is really easy to use, and it is also really convenient when it comes to the speed of installation. So you can see, once again, DC packs, AC packs, and MV station. This is the global ESS market size. This is just a prediction. Of course, prices are important, but we need to think about different types, and the standard barometer for these graphs are gigawatt. California, Texas, and many regions have PV or wind power plants. So, for the stable supply of energy, the importance of grid is growing in North America. And with the EV batteries demand, China is expected to have the largest market by 2030. And in Korea, KEPCO's grid stabilization and long-duration ESS projects are being promoted. And this is the market trend of Korea when it comes to the ESS. And when it comes to the specific market trend, you can see different needs of different market players. For example, battery manufacturers think about how to save energy or what type of methods they're going to use for their batteries. In the past, the capacity was 2 or 3 megawatts, but recently, many Chinese authorities or Chinese companies are conducting research to increase the capacity to 6 megawatt. So you can see the evolution of the batteries. And LFP batteries is developed mostly by Chinese players. When it comes to the perspective of PCS manufacturers, the key points is MV stations and AC bags and the maximization of the power conversion efficiency. SI refers to system integrators, so the operation and management using BMS technology is their interest, and BMS related technology is associated very closely with their business as well. Last but not least, so far, ESS has been in many people's interest, and going forward, DC grid is going to be further expanded. And that is based on our expectations because the development of solar power plants and wind power plants is going to be further pursued, and the grid itself is going to be dedicated to DC for maximized efficiency from some people's perspectives. And as you're well aware, HVDC grids are already installed in Korea, and the distribution of electricity surrounding DC is going to be further facilitated. DC-DC converters, and the switch gears, or SSCB, are going to be spread, and their application will be expanded as well. To sum up, carbon neutrality and RE back will lead to the increase of ESS and DC grid. So the way of storing energy is going to be diversified. So far, electric type of ESS is very actively utilized, and I believe that a greater variables of ESS is going to be further developed in different sectors. We ask for your active support and interest. Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. For achievement of RE100, he explained why energy storage system is important, and he also talked about various roles played by energy storages. And the last presentation will be made by a wind energy expert, Mr. Yang Jinyoung of Korea Wind Energy Industry Association will give a presentation about the present and the future of offshore wind power generation. Good afternoon, I'm Yang Jinyoung, and it's already way past 6 p.m. and it's an honor for me to give the last presentation for today's event. And I would like to give a brief introduction about our association. And our association is an association of 245 players composing the local wind power generation industry, including government agencies and regional governments like Chungcheongnam-do. On behalf of the wind energy industry, we're proposing policy measures to the National Assembly, and also we're making efforts in order to improve the business environment for the member company, excuse me. And today we're talking about the present and the future of carbon neutrality related technologies, and therefore I would like to focus more on the first and the second part of my presentation. At the moment, there are 121 wind farms in Korea, and compared to 2023, the power capacity has increased by 14.35% in a year, in a single year. And on the next page, you will see the installation status by year. If you view the red line, since 2014, the speed of increase has increased dramatically. And in 2014, the basic plan for renewable energy production was introduced, and the government started to focus more on renewable energy generation, and RPS system was introduced, and in Jeju-do Island and on the west coast, offshore wind farms were introduced after 2014. In 2014, as you can see on the right-hand side, in 2024, 6 onshore wind farms were introduced and 1 offshore wind farm was introduced in 2024. And next, we have summarized the wind farms, the authorized wind farms in Korea. On the left-hand side, you will see onshore wind farms. At the moment, most of the onshore wind farms are located on the eastern part and on the southern part of the country. And in the case of offshore wind farms, they're mainly located on the western and the southern part of the country, including Chungnam. You will see that most of the permits are concentrated on the aforementioned regions. And this image shows the country's first wind farm that was built based on instruction from the late President Park Chung-hee, and it is vastly different from the wind farms of these days. And you will see a pointy end, and that is a wind turbine, or that is a wind power generator that was available at the time. And as a result, our association has designated February 27th as the day of wind power generation, and we have commemorated the day of wind power generation since then. The world's first wind farm was introduced in Denmark multiple decades ago in 1980. However, the size of wind power generations significantly increased, the size of blades increased, the size of towers increased. In 2014, a Chinese manufacturer in 2024, a Chinese manufacturer successfully developed the largest wind turbine in history. And according to the industrial experts, we believe that a new wind turbine with power capacity of 35 megawatts will be able to introduce by 2030. However, in the industry, we believe that we cannot indefinitely increase the size of the blades and the towers and etc. because there's an issue of load on the structure. And that's the reason why smaller turbines are most widely used in the industry. And there are some overlaps in the presentation details. We have fixed and buoyant wind power generators. And in the case of fixed wind power generators, monopile and jacket types are available, and monopiles are easily installed, and the installation costs are lower in this case. And in the case of monopile, these are the ones that are installed in the coastal area where the water is relatively less deep, and its stability and safety has been widely verified in the global market. And in the case of jacket type, it is, as you can see in the image, it shows a high level of stability, and it can also be installed in the deep sea. However, it takes more time for them to be installed because of the more complex structure. And on the next page, you will see a monopile type. And in Korea, no monopile has been installed. And this shows the picture was included in the presentation material for your information. And in the case of Yonggwang, for the first time in Korea, they opted for the monopile type and they're currently installing it. In the case of jacket type, they were installed on the western coast and also on Jeju-do Island. In the case of buoyant type, floating type, in the wind power industry, we believe that this is a future technology, and especially in Korea, we have a limited land, and therefore we prefer offshore wind farms to generate renewable energy, and that's one of the most viable solution for us because we have a limited land. But floating type is important because it could be installed offshore, and since wind quality in the ocean is better, we can generate even larger number of power through this. There are four types. In the case of half submerged type, we have we will install a floating structure. Floating structure would be fixated, and on the floating structure, the wind power generator will be installed, and this is the most widely used type in the world. And next type is spot type, and stability is ensured utilizing the floating capacity of the structure, and that's also widely used in the global market. And in the case of TLP type, as you can see in the image, the bottom structure is fixated on the ground, on the sea ground, and therefore no matter how high the tide or wave is, the structure will be able to maintain the level of safety and stability. And in the case of barge type, they're using a relatively less thicker floating structure, and this is used to float or fixate a relatively lighter wind power generator structure. And this is the first floating type commercial wind power generator. These are installed in Scotland, and you can see that 6 units are installed. And as was mentioned before, in the case of fixated types, they're fixated. The structure is fixated on the sea ground, on the ocean ground. However, in the case of floating type, cable should also be floating since the structure floats. And LS Electronics is the only one in Korea that has relevant technologies, and they're expected to provide the structure and the cables to the buoyant structure, floating structure, to be installed near Ulsan. And in the case of Ulsan Haeori Wind Farm, they will be located 80 kilometers off the coastal region of Ulsan. And this will be mentioned. This will be important not only to us but also to solar power generators. The U-shaped offshore power grid and energy expressway will be considered as important projects, not only for us, but also for solar power generators. High quality energy, renewable energy, could be transported to the areas with higher energy demands, and it is important for us to secure stable renewable energy resources in the age of RE100. And if we can secure energy expressway, it will help our local companies achieve RE100. And if we can do this, it will definitely expand the usage of renewable energy sources. And as a result, it would definitely benefit the government's climate actions and policies and carbon neutrality initiatives. And that's it from me. And I wanted to mention more. I wanted to state more about the government policies, including energy expressways. And we're planning to host a public hearing in Seoul in a few days. And I hope more details could be shared with you during the public hearing. Thank you for listening. Thank you very much. Mr. Yang gave a presentation about the present and the future of wind power generation. That concludes today's event. Thank you for being with us. And also, I would like to extend my special gratitude to the speakers and the panelists that have participated in today's event. I hope that today's insights will help us deliver sustainable future and carbon neutrality. And next year, we hope to see you again next year with even fruitful discussions. Thank you very much.